On Christmas Eve in 1945, a tragedy struck the Sodder family in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The family home, a large two-story house, caught fire in the middle of the night. The parents, George and Jenny Sodder, and 4 of their children managed to escape the flames, but 5 of the Sodder children, Martha, Maurice, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were presumed deceased after the fire. However, they were ever found, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance raised questions that would linger for decades. The fire started around 1 a.m., and the Sodders quickly fled the house, believing their children were trapped inside. But after firefighters arrived and put out the blaze, they were unable to find any trace of the missing children in the rubble. In fact, despite the intense fire, the home's walls and other structures remained largely intact. This was puzzling, as experts claimed that the fire should have left behind at least some remains of the children. The Sodders grew suspicious when a few peculiar things came to light. First, their phone lines had been cut prior to the fire, which delayed their call to the fire department. Second, the family had heard odd sounds, like an explosion, just before the blaze began. George Sodder even believed he had seen a man near the house earlier that evening, acting strangely. After the fire, Jenny Sodder received a strange phone call at the family's temporary home, where a woman on the other end of the line seemed to know details about their family. The most perplexing part of the case came years later. In 1947, 2 years after the fire, the Sodders received a letter with a photograph showing a young man resembling their son, Louis, who would have been one of the missing children. The letter was postmarked in Central City, Kentucky, and the boy in the photograph had a resemblance to Louis, though he was alive and appeared to be in his late teens. George and Jenny spent years investigating, convinced that their children had been kidnapped before the fire and that the blaze was a cover-up. They hired private investigators and followed numerous leads, but nothing substantial ever came of it. In 1952, they put up a billboard near the site of the fire offering a reward for information, but the case remained unsolved. Despite the passage of time, the Sodder parents continued their search for answers, holding on to hope that their children might still be alive. The mystery of the 5 missing Sodder children remains one of the most baffling disappearances in American true crime history.